All right, welcome to 7.2. This whole section, the second section of chapter 7, is just kind of investigating exactly what it means for a figure to be congruent. And here's kind of the key concept of what it means to be congruent. So we're going to go through the words. If two figures are congruent, then their corresponding sides are also congruent or equal. Okay, I'm going to write the word equal under here. And their corresponding angles are also congruent or equal. And these are the little marks that we show which sides are equal and correspond. So you're going to see that side AB is the shorter side of this right triangle, and side DE is the shorter side of the congruent triangle. Notice they both have a little one little hash mark in there. That means these two sides are equal and corresponding. Side B, C, and EF are the longer legs of both triangles, and they have double hash marks showing that they are congruent. And then side AC and DF are the hypotenuse for both of the triangles, and they have three little hash marks showing that they are congruent. If we marked any of these other sides with one hash mark, it would mean that those sides are congruent. So we can't just do a hash mark here and one here because those three sides are obviously not all equal. So these two are equal based on their hash marks, and then these two are equal based on their three hash marks. Well, angles are the same way. We're going to mark the right angle first, and you can see the right angles are obviously both congruent because they're both 90 degrees. And then angle A and D are congruent because they have one little arc. And then angles C and F, we don't know their measurement, but we know that C and F are congruent because they both have two little arcs. So the line segments, the length of the lines, are done by little hash marks, and the angles are done by little arcs. Okay, and here's the symbols. Triangle, ABC, is congruent. Okay, congruent is an equal sign with a little symbol like that, showing that they're equal, but it's not really a numeracy or numerically equal. They're just showing that they're equal parts. And triangle ABC is congruent to DEF. And then here's how it works. Angle A is congruent to angle D, showing by the marks. B is congruent to angle E, and angle C is congruent to angle F. And then here's our sides. Side AB is congruent to side DE, and so on. So that's kind of the key concept that we're going to use throughout the rest of this section here. So I'm going to go ahead and go down to example 1 and kind of show you. And it says, in the figure below, these two triangles are congruent because DEF is the image of ABC reflected over this line that lays right in the middle. We could say it's reflected, and then it would be a translation as well if we wanted to do that. But we can tell that it's congruent. We could get it there if we had to by a couple of different ways. The parts of the congruent figures that match or correspond are called corresponding parts, just like when we had the parallel lines and a transversal. The corresponding angles were the angles that would match up in the intersection. That's what that means. So here's our first example. We're writing congruent statements. That is these things highlighted in yellow. These are just congruent statements showing that angle G is congruent to angle J, angle L is congruent to angle I, and then same thing with our sides. Side JK is congruent to GH. And all we're doing here is looking for the little hash marks. Side GH has one and side JK has one. That means they're congruent and corresponding. Side IH is congruent to LK or KL. They are corresponding and congruent. And then as far as my angles go, look for the little arcs. So one arc and one arc. That means G and J are corresponding and congruent. And then my two arcs is I and L. Those two angles are congruent. And then my three arcs are angle H and angle K. So that's all that it means by writing those congruent statements, just looking at the angles and the sides and deciding based on the marks which ones are congruent. So let's do a guided practice of that. You go ahead at the top of this next page, top of 523, if I can get up there, pause the video. There's no marks, but you should be able to look at this figure and write the congruent statements of angles that you think are congruent, and then check it. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to do a couple of them for you. Angle M is congruent to angle A. And I'm going to go ahead and mark this with angle with a little arc. And then angle N is congruent to angle B because I know they are corresponding. So I'm going to do 2 marks on this one. Okay? And then I don't want to assume that P and O and K and S are all right angles, but we can assume that in this situation. But if not, we're going to look at this, and we know since N and B are corresponding, O and K are corresponding because it looks like it's a reflection over this random line in the middle. Okay? So we're going to say O and K are corresponding, and P and S are corresponding. And then let's look at our sides. Okay? So let's see, side MN and side AB. So side MN is congruent to side, sorry, not angle, to side AB. That's what that little line above here means. Line segment MN, which is this, and line segment AB. And then I know that M and P, line MP, is congruent to AS. And you should be able to figure out the rest. We're going to stop there. But hopefully you have the rest of those. Okay, moving on. Let's look at the next example. Example 2, triangle ABC is congruent. So they're telling me that ABC is congruent to XYZ. Okay, they're telling me it's congruent, write congruent statements. That means I have to find the corresponding parts. Okay, then determine which transformation. So you guys, it's really important that you look at step 1 and step 2 to do this one down here. So I can tell that angle B and angle Y are corresponding. Okay, I can also tell that angle A and angle X are corresponding. And I can tell that C and Z, and it shows you here, angle A and X, congruent. Angle B and Y, congruent. Angle C and Z, congruent. Then it also tells us about the sides. Side AB, it's the shortest side, so it definitely corresponds with XY. So let's mark that with one little hash mark. Okay? And then I can look at side AC and even count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And side XZ, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I can tell those are definitely congruent. So we'll put 2 hash marks there. And then CA, we already did CA and XZ. And then BC and YZ. But you guys can see that. Okay? We would put 3 hash marks on this and 3 hash marks on that. Now, if they were all 3 the same length, all 3 sides were the same length, we could just do 1 hash mark all the way around if they were all the same length. But these are 3 different lengths, so we have to do 3 different hash marks. Okay, then step 2. So now we've done our corresponding angles and our corresponding sides. And then we're going to determine the transformations. So I can tell that the orientation is reversed, so it has to be either a rotation or a reflection. And it says that the orientation is reversed, so at least one of the transformations is a reflection. Oh, but if I did a rotation, look, this angle of angle A would be down here at the bottom if I did a 180-degree rotation. So it has to be a reflection because angle A has to map on to angle X, the corresponding parts. So it has to be a reflection over the y-axis, which would put B right here, and A, so B prime would be here, and A would be right here. Okay, can you guys see that? I'm just drawing this right here. Okay, I'm going to just do this one side. And then you can see we need to do a translation 2 units down. Okay, so a reflection over Y, and then translate it 2 units down. And that maps this onto this. And we've kind of done this through Khan Academy. All right, I'm going to have you pause the video and try the got it. Oops, sorry, I changed pages. Try the got it down below. And what I want you to do is determine the transformations. I'm going to do the sides for you. I'm going to do a couple of the sides and the angles. I'm going to tell you the angle X and Z are congruent and N and L are congruent. And then I'm going to tell you that M and K are congruent and W and Y are congruent. Okay, so we could have that. We could have angle W is congruent to angle Y, is congruent to angle M, is congruent to angle K. And then we can do the same things for the sides, and I'm going to make this short because I'm over 10 minutes. These sides are all congruent, my long sides. And my short sides are congruent. So then you guys can figure that out, okay? And I'm going to write it one thing, side YZ, right here, side YZ is congruent to side WX, is congruent to side MN, because that's the long side, is congruent to LK. Interesting, because we didn't have 4 of the sides that were congruent before. Up here at the top, the sides were all different. These, you have a couple. So here's what I want you to enter for your 2 points today. The transformations that will get you from this down to this. So from the blue to the red. Here's your points for the video. Okay? And then I want you to complete. Sorry that it's a little over 10 minutes, but not much. Bring to class. I want you to bring to class right here. I want you to look at example 3. Read through this and answer the got it. And bring this to class. That's it. And Jake, I'm sorry I didn't do any funny jokes. I apologize, but I'm out of time.